Addiction isn't just what you consume, it's what consumes you. Not all addictions come in bottles, powders, or pills. Some wear smiles, some hide in ambition. Some sit quietly on your phone screen and call themselves coping. But beneath every addictive behavior isn't just craving. It's a cry from the unconscious, a message your mind has been avoiding. Carl Jung once warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's addiction. It's not only chemical, it's the shadow self, screaming through your habits, disguised as choices. You don't just reach for the bottle. You reach for silence, for something that feels like safety. Because somewhere along the way, something exiled you from yourself. This video is not about willpower. It's about recovery through awareness. We'll walk through Carl Jung's lens. 7 psychological stages of healing. Stages that reveal why self-sabotage keeps returning. And what must be remembered, not repressed. Because what you suppress rules you. And what you face releases you. So if you've ever asked, "Why do I keep going back?" If you've ever wanted more than temporary control, stay with me. Because real recovery doesn't begin with discipline. It begins in the dark. And now, Stage 1. The shadow craving. You didn't choose the addiction. Not consciously, but your shadow did. The part of you that carries everything you pushed away. The rage you swallowed. The grief you never grieved. The worth you forgot how to believe in. Carl Jung called this the shadow self, a vault of suppressed emotion, unmet needs, and untold truths. And here's the secret. Addiction isn't the problem. It's the shadow's solution. The drink, the binge, the endless scroll. They weren't cravings, they were cries. The psyche's desperate attempt to rebalance a system that's been quietly breaking. You weren't addicted to pleasure. You were addicted to relief. You were never trying to feel good. You were just trying to stop feeling bad. And when that relief works, even for a moment, your nervous system remembers. It binds itself to the behavior. It creates a loop, not out of desire, but out of survival. This is the first stage, the shadow craving, where the addiction begins, not as weakness, but as an unconscious agreement. Let me feel nothing, because feeling everything might destroy me. But numbing the pain also numbs the self. And what you silence today becomes what controls you tomorrow. Stage 2. Descent into the abyss. You didn't fall into addiction all at once. You descended, quietly, gradually, until rock bottom felt like home. This is the second stage, the abyss. In Jungian psychology, the abyss is where the ego breaks, where the mask shatters, and the self begins to fragment. It's where addiction stops being a habit and becomes an identity. You start saying things like, "I can't help it. This is just who I am. Maybe I was always broken." But that's not your voice. It's the voice of the shadow, amplified and repeated so many times it becomes true. This stage is marked by collapse of routines, relationships, meaning. The outside world might still see your mask, but inside, you've vanished beneath it. Carl Jung described this psychic fall as the night sea journey, a mythic descent into unconscious chaos, where the ego no longer leads. You begin living from your wound, reacting, numbing, repeating. And every time you try to stop, a darker voice says, "Without me, you are nothing." But listen closely, even in the abyss, the soul whispers, and if you stay awake, if you don't look away, you may hear the truth. You are not lost. You are unlayering. If you're recognizing yourself here, take a moment to subscribe. Journeys like this are never meant to be taken alone. Stage 3. The persona collapse. The mask comes off. At first, you held it together. You smiled. You worked. You performed the part, even as something inside you began to rot. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive society, to be accepted, to be good enough. But addiction doesn't play well with personas. It waits behind the curtain until the mask begins to crack. And in this stage, the persona breaks. The fracture becomes undeniable. You forget your stories. You contradict yourself. You cancel. You lie. You disappear. Not because you want to, but because the gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are has become too wide to stand on. This is the moment when the addict self and the public self collide. The shame floods in. The relationships strain. The mirror tells the truth. You see your own eyes, and they don't look back the same. It's tempting here to build a new mask, to pretend harder, to hide smarter. But Jung warned us, the more you identify with the persona, the more you lose the soul. In this stage, you have a choice: double down on the mask, or begin the slow work of peeling it away. Because the persona's collapse is not your death. It's your invitation to finally meet the one you buried to survive. Stage 4. Confronting the archetype, facing your inner patterns. Once the mask breaks, something older steps in. You're not just battling cravings anymore. You're standing face to face with a force far deeper, more ancient, more archetypal. Carl Jung believed we are not merely individuals. We are vessels for patterns. And when the ego collapses, those patterns rise. In this stage, confronting the archetype, you meet the one inside you that's been pulling the strings. Maybe it's the wounded child, crying out for a love that never came. Maybe it's the destroyer, who burns everything before it can leave you first. Maybe it's the addict, who craves chaos just to feel alive. These aren't emotions. They're blueprints, living psychic energy passed through generations, waiting for their moment to speak. And now they speak through you. It's overwhelming, frightening, and strangely familiar. You're not going crazy. You're waking up. You're finally seeing who's been sitting behind the wheel while you called it you. And here's the paradox. You can't destroy the archetype. You can only face it, name it, witness it, hold it without judgment. Because what you fight in the dark only grows darker. But what you face begins to loosen. And for the first time, you don't flinch. You just say, I see you. Stage 5. Integrating the wound, healing the emotional core. Up until now, you've been surviving your story. But now, you begin to rewrite it. This is stage 5. Integration of the wound. Carl Jung taught that healing doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from befriending it. You don't conquer your addiction by declaring war on it. You break its hold by understanding what it's protecting. And almost always, it's guarding a wound, a moment, a memory, a meaning you assigned to yourself when the world gave you none. Maybe it was the night you were left, or the words you heard and never forgot, or the silence that screamed louder than the trauma itself. Addiction was the bandage, but the bleeding never stopped. Here, you sit with what hurts, not to fix it, but to feel it. You begin practicing what Jung called self-integration, bringing the broken parts home. You grieve, you forgive, you stop asking your past to apologize, and something strange happens. The craving fades, not because you've become stronger, but because the pain no longer needs to shout. You listened. You stayed. And that was the part of you that never left. Stage 6. Rebirth of meaning. The craving is quieter now, but something deeper begins to stir. A question, not about pain, but about purpose. This is stage 6. Rebirth of meaning. Addiction had a purpose too. It gave structure to your chaos, a rhythm, a ritual, a reason to escape the question that haunts the sober mind. Now that I've survived, what am I here for? Carl Jung believed the true goal of individuation wasn't just integration. It was the discovery of personal meaning. Not what the world tells you to chase, but what your soul has been whispering all along. In this stage, recovery shifts from defense to direction. You begin reconnecting with what you'd felt lost. Joy without needing permission. Silence without panic. Love that doesn't have to be earned. A future not built from fear, but intention. You realize that healing wasn't just about quitting. It was about returning to the part of you that remembers why you're alive. This isn't a finish line. It's a new foundation. And from here, you rise. Not as someone different, but as someone undeniably you. Stage 7. Conscious living. Staying awake and aware. You've faced the shadow, felt the fall, held the wound, and now you begin to live with awareness. This is stage 7. Conscious living. The addiction doesn't vanish. The urges don't dissolve into nothing. But now, you see them, you name them, and you choose differently. Every day becomes a return to self, not a battle, but a remembering. You no longer chase relief. You listen for alignment. Carl Jung believed that the greatest transformation wasn't becoming someone new. It was learning how to be with what's already within you, without judgment. In conscious living, there is no final stage. There is only the next breath, the next choice, the next truth. You understand that relapse isn't failure, it's a messenger, an invitation back to awareness. And you begin to trust that your worth isn't found in perfection, but in presence. Recovery isn't something you finish. It's a way you walk, a path lit by your shadow and led by your soul. And if you ever forget, you don't have to start over. You just have to come back, because this time, you're awake. Final reflection, call to soul. Addiction isn't just about what you take in. It's about what was taken from you. Your sense of safety, your voice, your permission to feel. And maybe no one ever gave you a map. But Jung didn't believe in maps. He believed in inner myths. Stories etched in your bones long before anyone called you broken. These 7 stages, they aren't steps on a ladder. They're layers of becoming. You don't climb out of addiction. You descend inward until the parts you abandoned feel safe to come home. Because recovery isn't the return to who you were. It's the reunion with who you've always been. So if you're still in the storm, pause, close your eyes, and ask the part of you that's still afraid. What are you trying to protect? That question could be your doorway back to yourself. You are not behind. You are not broken. You're just beginning. And the fact that you're here, listening, means the journey home has already started. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to drop a comment below and share your opinions. We read every single one. Thanks for watching.